Well, it is a beautiful Thursday morning here in the Midwest. The sun is bright and shiny. The mercury is lazy. It's laying at the bottom of the chart there. I think we're about 7 or 8 degrees outside, but that's all right. And I think we're hitting the 30s over the weekend. So people in Chicago will be deliriously happy running around in, short sleeves and Bermuda shorts. So, are you getting all of your summer gear out there, Barrett? Are you ready for the weekend?
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm getting my suntan lotion out.
It is going to be balmy compared to what we have had to persevere through. But again, that's what makes life so interesting and engaging and addicting. So it keeps us here in our mortal cloth.
Yeah, I saw a meme online about the cold, and it showed this woman in her parka, and the temperature, it said temperature is like 5 degrees, and she says, "Oh, if only it were in double digits." And then the next screen shows her in her parka, and the temperature is negative 15 degrees. And she said, "That's not what I meant."
Yeah, we have to be very specific. The mind is somewhat impish, and so if we don't clearly define our uh, the things that we desire, the mind will produce all sorts of glitchy stuff for us, and that's a reminder to keep us on track with the Course in Miracles, because it is a book about mind refinement, getting the mind in shape, giving it a sense of direction and purpose, and starting off with a new year. And this is a perfect time to make that commitment to doing the lessons if you are inclined, or at least spending time with the course every day and taming the mind, getting the mind to purge all of those fear thoughts and those negative thoughts and those self-defeating thoughts so that we can advance more clearly into that state of the atonement.
Yeah, it is a journey, that's for sure. And I agree. This is a nice time, start of a new year, to really recommit yourself. There's that beautiful line, make this year different by making it all the same. And really what that's saying is that we make it the same by using everything that happens to us in our life for the purpose of healing. We realize everything here can be used to help us awaken to our truth. And it doesn't matter what it is, if it's someone who's getting under our skin, or if it's a physical issue that we're experiencing, or just looking out at the craziness of the world on the news and feeling upset by that. All of these different circumstances can be used to help us realize peace is always here. And if I'm not experiencing peace, it's only because I'm not choosing it. And we were talking as we got started here a little bit before we went live about what we wanted to talk about today, and we just sort of zoned in on chapter 18, and there's a beautiful section that's entitled "I Need Do Nothing." And before I even start talking about that, just those words are very helpful. And it's not saying we don't do anything physically in our life, but that we don't need to do anything. What does that mean? It means that we don't believe any of our actions or any of our words are going to make us happy, that our happiness is actually a state that is beyond what happens here in the world, and that it transcends all of the ups and downs of this dualistic experience that we have. And so it puts us in a different frame of mind to help us experience something different. And I think it's even just that those four words, "I need do nothing," can kind of go with us as we go through our day and be a gentle reminder of what we're here for and what we want to come of this experience. So I think even just that right there is a really nice, helpful reminder.
It absolutely is. And it brings us into the awareness that all of our efforts that we put into life are centered around this identity situation where we're identifying with the body. So, starting off this particular part, of chapter 18, it says, you still have too much faith in the body as a source of strength. What plans do you make that do not involve its comfort or protection or enjoyment in some way? This makes the body an end and not a means in your interpretation, and this always means you still find sin attractive. No one accepts atonement for himself who still accepts sin as his goal. You have thus not met your one responsibility. So that's interesting there. We don't have a multitude of things that we have to address in living. We have one responsibility, and that is to step back from indulging in the attack and the identification with the physical realm. Atonement is not welcomed by those who prefer pain and destruction. And that's the inevitable outcome of identifying with the body, because the body is part of the time stream. So it's going to age and decay and fall apart. And it's also a part of the world of duality. So for every good day you have in your body, you're probably somewhere at some point in time going to have a bad day. So that reduces it down to a fundamental level where there's really not a lot of discussion you can have around the subject. It just simply is, do you want the pain that is going to accompany the pleasure? Or do you want to step back from that and actually experience a world in which there is consistency, and that consistency is leading us into the ecstatic life where there is joy and love and that supreme level of union with God.
Yeah. And it's something that we need to practice, right? As we start to get these ideas, one of the things that almost everyone notices is, well, I consciously want happiness and joy, but then in my experience, I'm suffering and I'm judging and I'm condemning and I'm feeling challenged. So there's this gap between our intellectual understanding of these ideas and then our experience. And basically the whole practice of the Course is learning to bridge this gap so that we can actually come to experience that peace and joy and not just intellectually say, this is what I want, while we're kind of, feeling miserable all the time. So part of this paragraph you just read, Chris, really points to this very clearly. It says, atonement is not welcomed by those who prefer pain and destruction. Again, none of us consciously think, I prefer pain and destruction, right? Who would consciously think that? No one, right? But the fact that we're not always experiencing our internal peace and, endless happiness is basically an indicator that on some level, something within us is preferring pain and destruction. And this work then becomes starting to open our eyes to this, starting to witness this part of us that actually is attracted to guilt, it's attracted to pain, it's attracted to suffering. Not so that we can strengthen that, but actually by witnessing it, we are in the process of undoing it. And this is the work then. It's gently and lovingly looking at the shadow within and not buying into it and seeing the craziness of the ego thought system, but then being willing to set it aside. So again, this is why I think a lot of people pick up the Course and start studying it, and then they sort of set it down for a while, because what it's asking us to do is actually pretty unsavory to the ego anyway, to actually look at these parts within ourselves and say, that is not true. It's really a kind of a bold statement that it's trying to have us do, but it's also something that is achievable by all of us. And it's something that all we have to do is ask for Jesus' help in doing. And there's nothing that we can't look upon. There's no shred of darkness within our mind that the Holy Spirit won't help us to heal. So it comes always back to that sense of willingness. Are we willing to go there? Are we willing to uncover the shadow? Are we willing to ultimately step into the light of what we are?
Exactly. And continuing with this this next paragraph here, this is one of my favorite lines in the Course, this next statement here. It says, "There is one thing that you have never done. You have not utterly forgotten the body." And when we stop and contemplate that, that is a very profound statement. We are always so completely engaged with the body. And, you know, I know with myself, there have been those little brief seconds where I'm doing the dishes or doing some mundane task, and all of a sudden there's this tiny, tiny lapse where I've just completely forgotten the body and all of its functions. It's just the body's on autopilot, and all of a sudden I have that flash experience of not being addicted to this constant attention that we give the body. So that might be a good thing to aspire to as we move into 2018, is can you get to that point where you are so consumed by love and by, you know, the joy of just being alive, experiencing life in the moment, that you completely forget that you have these limitations, that you stop at your fingertips and your toe tips and the crown of the head and the bottom of your feet. All of these ways we have contained ourselves and diminished ourselves and made ourselves so small and tiny. And once you have that experience, there's an amazing phenomenon that occurs. You re-experience your true self. You are unlimited. You have an identity that is encompassing of all of creation. It goes on to say, it has perhaps faded at times from your sight, but it has not yet completely disappeared. You are not asked to let this happen for more than an instant, yet it is in this instant that the miracle of atonement happens. Afterwards, you will see the body again, but never quite the same. And every instant that you spend without awareness of it gives you a different view of it when you return. And that's really, you know, the bedrock that we are trying to build our identity on, is that experience of being all of creation, being, you know, beyond a universe, beyond a solar system, beyond any of the containments that we have in this realm, where we imagine ourselves to have a limitation. Because when we begin to experience that deeper connection, we begin to step into a space of being completely uncontained. And within that, there is a element of peace that is beyond description. You have to experience it. I can't tell you about it. You have to go there and have the experience.
Yeah. And it really is the goal, right? It's not an intellectual understanding is not the goal of the Course, but the experience is the goal. The experience of the peace that passeth understanding. And words can only point to it as you're talking about it, Chris, but they can't actually give it to someone. So, and what you're saying actually just connects so nicely to the next paragraph. I'm gonna read that too. At no single instant does the body exist at all. Really, that's a powerful statement, right? At no single instant does the body exist at all. It is always remembered or anticipated, but never experienced just now. So the body requires linear time in order to be a thing. Without linear time, in that eternal always, there is no body. And that's what this is saying. And it's sort of a remarkable statement, and it can sort of generate a certain amount of fear, because a lot of us are afraid to let go of the body. But if we realized in letting go of believing the body is what we are, that we would come into something so much more, then we wouldn't be afraid. We would actually be anticipating it. He goes on to say, only its past and future make it seem real. Time controls it entirely, for sin is never wholly in the present. In any single instant, the attraction of guilt would be experienced as pain and nothing else, and would be avoided. It has no attraction now. Its whole attraction is imaginary, and therefore must be thought of in the past or in the future. So, in this holy instant, in this eternal always that is here right now, there is no pain or suffering. Now, that's also another sort of amazing statement, right? I mean, so much of the time we live our lives from a place of pain and suffering, and it feels like it's here now, right? But what we're saying is that experience of pain is actually an attachment to the past or the future, and that those things are not really here in the eternal present. So what are we experiencing then? We're experiencing an echo, or experiencing an echo of the past overlaying this eternal always. And it's not until we actually sink below that that we can come into this experience of this oneness and peace that we're discussing today.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And, one of the things about this journey that we're on is that it is a journey that seems familiar. I remember as a very small child, 5 or 6 years old, I had this haunting feeling that would well up inside me that there was some place that I was supposed to be, but I couldn't remember it. I couldn't get a clear picture of it in my mind. Mm. And that is, I think, an experience that's common to a lot of people. There's always this feeling that we belong somewhere else. And the fact that we're here in this world causes us to indulge in order to keep ourselves here. Hmm. But when you stop using the entertainment systems, disengage from watching television, and disengage from going skiing, and disengage from all the activities that keep you focused in this realm, even briefly. You don't have to do this forever and forever. Just to be able to completely disconnect from this whole world, that whole memory that is waiting for you there starts to flood into your consciousness. And you realize that in truth, there is a thing that is beyond any human experience. And that is a thing that feels natural and right all of a sudden. So once you get this first taste of, separation from the body, then there is the confidence that begins to grow in the experience of going back to your true identity. And all of a sudden the body is a very poor substitute for your true sense of identity.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And the contrast between reality, which is our state of oneness in heaven, and this world, which we think is real, but it actually is illusory. As we experience the reality more and more fully, as you're saying, Chris, this world just doesn't cut it anymore. We know that the sort of fleeting pleasures and happiness is here don't really hold a candle to the eternal happiness of heaven. And we just become more and more diligent and dedicated. So there's a beautiful section in the manual for teachers called The Development of Trust. It talks about the stages that we all go through on our spiritual journey to coming into that willingness to go all the way to heaven. And it basically talks about how we have to grow in this trust. We have to deepen our trust. And that's the work, right? The work is in continuing to be persevering, continuing to deepen into our wanting just pure joy rather than some sort of mixed bag of happinesses and sorrows, which is what the world gives us. And we just get better and better at making that choice and choosing for happiness and joy rather than the ego's kind of, again, half promises that it always gives us.
And that draws us back down to what we started off with here, which is that statement, I need do nothing. And when we go all the way down to paragraph 7, we get clarification on that. And it says, to do anything involves the body. And if you recognize you need do nothing, you have withdrawn the body's value from your mind. Here is the quick and open door through which you slip past centuries of effort and escape from time. And that's the beauty of all this, is that you could spend the next 10,000 lifetimes beating your brains out trying to assault heaven, this attack on heaven. I'm going to batter down the doors and enter heaven, and never budge 1 inch in your journey. But the book gives us all these little tools to work with that causes us to be able to leap through time in huge bounds. And as we're doing this, it is affecting the timeline for everybody throughout the universes, the cosmos, whatever, so that our little tiny effort actually has an impact and lifts up billions of souls with us. And that is even more incentive to stay on track with this idea. This is the way in which sin loses all attraction right now. So when you're in the moment, there is no desire or lust or need or want or craving. You can spend time in this state of consciousness, and then when you pop back into this realm, all of a sudden you've got to go to the bathroom, you've got to have a bowl of soup, and you've got to make that phone call. All these things flood in on you that are the distractions that you have allowed for yourself to engage in. But the true experience of life is found in this moment of separation from the body. And within that separation, there is a unification with all of creation that exists in all of eternity.
Yeah, it's a pretty good thing, right? I mean, it's a pretty big payoff, unification with everything throughout all eternity. I think a lot of times as we do this work, we come across a certain fear, like a fear of loss, right? If we're giving up the body, we think the body is what we are, so we feel like we're losing something. But what Chris just said is perfect, that we're not losing anything, we're actually gaining everything. And if we can really see that and know that, then we can deal and work with the fear so that we don't live our lives from it. We all know that when we're in a place of fear, we're not happy, right? Fear and happiness cannot really be there simultaneously. So when we notice ourselves being fearful, what we can remember is that we have another choice. And as this paragraph says, I need do nothing. Right? I don't need to fix it. I just need to witness it. And in witnessing it, I can start to detach from it. And as I let go of it, I come into my true identity, which is not this time-bound form that we call a body. My true identity is the endless nature of Christ itself. And that's worth saying yes to, right? Because that is an experience of joy and happiness. So yeah, I think that's the real big lesson that I'm taking from this, especially as we're going through it.
Exactly. And this is a brilliant way to start off the new year, is to look at the truth of what your real desire is. And the desires of the ego, of course, involve raping and plundering and becoming the hero of the dream, and standing on top of a mountain of corpses, the victor of all space and time. And there's no love there. When you finally get to that mountaintop, when you climbed all those different levels of attainment in the material world, the one thing that you wanted the most was love, and it's not there. And we're seeing that in current American politics, I think, in a large way, because the attainment of all these different people who have these goals to change the world and rule the world, and yet at the end of the day, they realize that the thing they crave most is love, and they haven't had an ounce of that in all of their efforts. So maybe 2018 is a year where we can commit to love, and by example, help those around us to refocus on what it is that has value.
Yeah, and it reminds me of that line, I think it's in the text, where Jesus encourages us to see anything our brother does as either an expression of love or a call for love. And if we can just have that simple thought in our mind as we go through our day, it really puts us in a framework to be forgiving and kind and loving, because that's really all we want to do on the deepest level. Everything else is just an ego fantasy, and we can set that down. So just remembering that we have the choice. Which path are we going to go on? Are we going to choose the path of peace and joy, or are we going to choose the path of judgment and frustration? And remembering that we can do that is really how we find ourselves living a life of peace. So I think that all these ideas are really helpful as we go into the new year here.
Absolutely. And the the day is unfolding in front of us, the week and the month and the entire year. And maybe we can step into eternity periodically throughout this coming year and start to re-experience the truth that helps us to resolve the conflicts that we have with this material realm. So it will be interesting to watch the year unfold. I think Barrett and I do have some agendas that are going to start unfolding here for reaching out and connecting in live experiences with people. And we invite you to stay tuned and be alert for notifications, for opportunities to come together and experience love and just see what that feels like.
Beautiful. Well, I feel here, even on this very cold morning, I feel very warm as we talk and as we have this time together. So I'm just very grateful, Chris, for our connection, and I look forward to many more of these videos, and yeah, and in-person events too, and other ways people can connect. So that sounds awesome.
Yes, absolutely. It is a joy having you in my life, and I think it's time for us to go out there and transcend the moment and step back into the place we have always been.
Beautiful, beautiful. All right, we'll both go melt into the light here.
Very good. Talk to you soon.
All right, bye, man.
Goodbye.